The sound of crystal glasses chiming filled the dining room, that soft, practiced laughter that always seemed to follow my stepmother, Denise. The light from the chandelier hit her diamond earrings just right, like even the universe wanted to flatter her tonight. It was her birthday dinner, and I'd flown in from New York just to celebrate. Or at least, that's what everyone thought. From across the table, I caught my father's glance, tired, polite, avoidant. He was smiling, but the kind of smile you give when pretending something isn't broken. My fingers brushed the edge of my silk blouse, smoothing out an invisible wrinkle. Old habits. My mother used to say, "You hold yourself together, even when they want to see you fall apart." Denise lifted her glass, the gold bracelet on her wrist glinting. My mother's bracelet. The same one that had disappeared from our house after the funeral. Her voice was sugar-sweet. "I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight, especially Emily, who's always been like a daughter to me." Like a daughter. The words landed like a slap. A slow warmth rose up my chest, not from the wine, but from something deeper, older. I smiled back, calm, composed, every inch the woman she thought she'd rewritten. If she wanted to replace my mother tonight, she was about to learn. Some legacies don't get replaced. They get remembered, loudly. I was 17 when Denise moved into our house. My mother had been gone barely 8 months, breast cancer, stage 4, the kind that steals not just life, but color. Our home still smelled like her lavender candles, her scarves still hung in the closet, her handwriting still marked sticky notes on the fridge. "Don't forget lunch, Em." Then one morning, there was Denise, glossy hair, perfect manicure, perfume too strong for a place that still held grief. She moved through the house like a decorator, not a guest, touching picture frames, rearranging vases, humming. And just like that, the air shifted. My father said she made him feel alive again. I wanted to be happy for him. I tried. But grief doesn't like intruders. A week later, I came home to find her standing in my mother's old art studio, the one space I thought would stay untouched. The easel was gone, the canvases stacked in the corner. In their place, a cream-colored chaise lounge and a vase of roses. "I thought this room could be my reading nook," she'd said, smiling like it was harmless. "Your mom would have wanted us to make new memories, right?" Something inside me cracked. My throat burned, but no sound came out. I just nodded and left, hands shaking so badly, I almost dropped the mug I was holding. That night, I pulled my mother's bracelet, the same gold one from her jewelry box, and slipped it on my wrist. It felt like armor. The next morning, Denise noticed. "That's beautiful," she said, eyes narrowing. "You should be careful with family heirlooms. They can get lost." I didn't answer. I just looked at her and whispered to myself, "Not this one." 2 weeks later, it was gone. When I asked, she smiled that polite, empty smile. "Maybe you misplaced it." That night, I stood in my mother's old room, my reflection blurry in the mirror, and made myself a quiet promise. I would leave this house, build something of my own, and one day, when I came back, she would see exactly what kind of woman my mother raised. I left for college 2 months after graduation, with 2 suitcases, $300, and my mother's last letter folded inside my wallet. It was short, just one line, written in her uneven handwriting. "When they doubt you, build something they can't destroy." At first, life was brutally ordinary. My dorm room smelled like cheap detergent and ramen noodles. I worked nights at a diner off campus, memorizing coffee orders and saving every tip in an old shoebox under my bed. My hands were always sore, my eyes always tired. But the exhaustion felt clean, mine, not something borrowed from grief. I majored in design, the same thing my mother loved, and I threw myself into it. I spent nights sketching at the library, learning software tutorials on YouTube, teaching myself how to turn beauty into structure. While other students went to parties, I learned how to build brands, logos, identities, stories, really. During my junior year, I met Rachel Monroe, a creative director visiting from New York. She saw my portfolio at a campus showcase and paused longer than anyone else had. "Who did this?" she asked. "Me," I said, barely able to meet her eyes. She smiled. You've got raw talent and a story in your lines. Rachel became my mentor, fierce, intuitive, the kind of woman who didn't ask for permission. She taught me how to pitch, how to walk into rooms where no one expected to see me, and make them listen anyway. By 25, I had a job offer at her firm in Manhattan. I moved into a tiny studio apartment overlooking nothing but a brick wall, but it was mine. The first paycheck I framed. The second, I used to buy a simple gold bracelet. Not to replace my mother's, nothing ever could, but to remind myself that I could rebuild what was taken. The next few years were a blur of deadlines, airports, and coffee cups. I learned to lead, to negotiate, to design campaigns that made brands millions. When Rachel retired, she handed me the keys to her office and said, "Don't shrink, Emily. You earned the whole room." And I did. I built Carter and Monroe Studio, my own agency, female-led, fiercely independent, and quietly profitable. But when my father called a few years later, asking if I could come home for Denise's 50th birthday, his voice cracked in a way I hadn't heard in years. It would mean a lot to her, he said. I almost said no. But something in me, maybe that same line from my mother's letter, whispered, sometimes they have to see it to believe it. So I booked the flight. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was returning home. I felt like I was arriving on my own terms. The restaurant was one of those upscale places where the lighting is dim enough to make everyone look softer, kinder. Jazz hummed low through the speakers. Waiters moved like shadows, and every table seemed to glisten under candlelight. Denise had chosen it, of course. She always liked control, even over ambience. I arrived a few minutes early, wearing a black satin dress and gold earrings shaped like tiny leaves. My bracelet caught the light as I lifted my glass of water, and for a second, I saw my reflection in the window, calm, centered, untouchable. Then they arrived. My father looked older, grayer. Denise, however, hadn't aged a day. Her hair perfectly styled, lips painted that same coral shade she'd worn since I was a teenager. She greeted me with an air kiss, her perfume wrapping around me like an unwanted memory. "You look nice, Emily," she said, scanning me the way she always did, like she was searching for flaws. I smiled. "You too, Denise. You've always loved the spotlight, haven't you?" Her smile tightened. "Well, tonight it's mine," she said playfully, motioning for the waiter to pour the champagne. As guests arrived, her friends, my father's business associates, even a few old neighbors, I noticed how everyone treated her like royalty. Gifts piled high. Compliments flowed. She soaked it all in, radiant and unbothered. When it was time for the speeches, my father stood first. He thanked everyone, then spoke about how Denise had brought life back into our home. I watched him carefully, wondering if he still remembered my mother's laugh, or if he'd buried it too deep to find. Then Denise took the floor, smiling in that polished, hostess way of hers. She began by talking about family, how we'd all grown so much, how she was proud of the life we'd built together. Then she paused, glancing at me. "And of course, Emily," she said, raising her glass. "You've always been like the daughter I never had. I hope your mother is looking down, proud of the way we've become such a strong, united family." The table clapped softly. My throat burned. Something in her tone, that quiet rewriting of history, flipped a switch I'd kept off for too many years. I stood slowly, feeling every pair of eyes turn toward me. My voice, when it came, was steady but sharp. "I'm sure my mother is looking down, Denise," I said. "And I think she'd be proud, not of this family, but of me, of how I built my life without erasing hers." The room went still. The jazz, the laughter, the murmurs gone. Denise's smile froze. Of course, I didn't let her finish. "You see," I continued, "for years I let people think I was just scraping by. But I wasn't. I built a design agency from the ground up. We just signed a national campaign for one of the biggest brands in the country. And next quarter, we're opening offices in London." Gasps, whispers. My father's eyes widened. "And that bracelet you're wearing?" I nodded toward her wrist. "My mother's bracelet. It looks beautiful." but I don't need it anymore. I made my own legacy. Denise's hand trembled. My father looked at her, then at me, guilt etched across his face. I took a slow breath. You try to take her place, Denise. But my mother doesn't need replacing. She lives here. I placed a hand on my chest, and everywhere I've built. Silence. Then one by one people began to clap. Not loud, just soft, sincere, echoing like a heartbeat. Denise looked down, her perfect smile finally cracking. And for the first time, I didn't feel angry. I just felt free. After the dinner ended, the restaurant emptied quickly, a natural instinct when tension fills the air thicker than perfume. The guests murmured polite goodbyes, avoiding eye contact as they left. The candles on the table flickered lower, shadows stretching long across the white linen. My father sat silently, his napkin still folded neatly on his lap. Denise stared down at her wine glass, swirling what was left, pretending to study its color. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was heavy, like something overdue. I leaned back, calm, composed. You know, Denise, I said softly, you didn't have to erase her to matter. Her eyes lifted, wet and startled. That's not what I was trying to do. You moved into our house before the flowers from her funeral had even wilted, I said, voice level but sharp. You changed her room, wore her bracelet, and then told a 17-year-old girl that grief was selfish. So yes, that's exactly what you tried to do. She flinched, but I didn't stop. And the thing is, I forgave you years ago. But forgiveness doesn't erase accountability. My father finally spoke, his voice small. Emily, I didn't realize how much it hurt you. I turned to him. You did. You just didn't want to see it. He looked away, shame coloring his face. For years, I'd wanted that acknowledgement, that simple truth. Now that it was here, it didn't sting as much as I thought it would. It just felt finished. I took a deep breath. Here's how this works now, I said, resting my hands on the table. If we're going to have a relationship, any kind of relationship, my mother's name gets spoken in this family again. Her pictures go back up. Her memory isn't a threat. It's part of me. Denise nodded quickly, tears finally falling. You're right, she whispered. I was so afraid of being compared to her. I tried to replace her instead. I softened slightly, not because she deserved it, but because I did. You don't need to compete with the dead, Denise. You just need to live differently. Then I turned to my father. And you, stop pretending peace means silence. You lost your wife. I lost my mother. But pretending it didn't happen didn't save either of us. He nodded slowly, voice breaking. I'll do better. I pushed my chair back, standing tall. Good. Then let's start there. Respect the past, live the present, and stop hiding behind comfort. For the first time, Denise reached across the table, not to touch me, but to remove the bracelet from her wrist. She set it down in front of me, trembling. It's yours, she said quietly. I looked at it, then at her. No, I said gently, sliding it back toward her. Keep it. You need to remember what it stands for more than I do. Her breath hitched. My father's eyes glistened. I grabbed my coat and walked toward the door, heels echoing against marble, each step measured, steady, free. Behind me, I heard Denise whisper to my father, voice breaking, she's her mother's daughter. And for once, she was right. A week later, I found myself back in New York, standing by my apartment window as the city glimmered beneath me. Morning light poured across the skyline, turning glass and steel into gold. The chaos of honking taxis below felt oddly comforting, proof that life, in all its noise and motion, just keeps moving forward. My phone buzzed. A text from my father. Visited your mom's grave today. Denise came too. Thank you. I stared at the message for a long time. There was no apology in it, no grand gesture. But there was truth, something I'd stopped expecting years ago. I smiled, set the phone down, and walked over to my desk. There, beside my laptop, was my mother's letter, the one I'd carried all these years. The ink had faded, but the words were still strong. When they doubt you, Build something they can't destroy. I traced the letters with my thumb, realizing she hadn't just meant a career. She meant me. That night at the restaurant, I hadn't gone there to humiliate anyone. I'd gone to reclaim something, not just her memory, but my own voice. And in doing that, I'd found something far more powerful than revenge: peace. A soft breeze drifted through the open window, brushing my hair back. I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the glass, older, stronger, calm in ways that grief once made impossible. For the first time, I didn't see the girl who lost everything. I saw the woman who rebuilt it. Later that evening, I put on the gold bracelet I'd bought years ago, the one that wasn't hers but carried her spirit all the same. It glowed against my wrist under the city lights. Then, on impulse, I opened my email and began typing a new project proposal, a community initiative for young women who'd lost their mothers, mentorship, design workshops, safe spaces for rebuilding. Because maybe that's what legacy really is. Not what we inherit, but what we create out of the ruins. As I hit send, the city lights blinked like a quiet applause. I whispered into the stillness, "We did it, Mom." And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was living in her shadow. I felt like I was walking beside it, proud, unshaken, free. That night, I didn't just defend my mother's place. I found mine, and I'll never let anyone rewrite her story or mine again. Bottom of form.